we've been distanced from a lot of violence. Like, I mean, we used to hunt and kill our food. Now we go to the shop and it's all in plastic wrappers and shit like that. We don't see the food. We don't see anything, right? So like we've been distanced from it.
It's almost uncomfortable to talk about it.
Exactly. Exactly. It really is. It's uncomfortable to discuss these things, but like violence is the underlying, like violence underlies all of civilization. It ain't going away.
Is it like that, I think it was a Jordan Peterson meme, where he's talking about, a dangerous man. Is that basically the idea?
It's
like
related, absolutely.
Yeah. So like, it is the capacity to be dangerous or the capacity to exert force.
Exactly. That is absolutely fundamental. And that's the minimum standard, what I'm talking about is even a step further, which is the recognition that everything in life exists with an undertone of violence. Like force is the universal currency. Like when it comes down to it, like we can talk, we can trade, but really what ends up actually moving things when push comes to shove is the push. Like it is the gunpoint. Like force is the universal language that everybody understands. Smart, dumb, sentient, non-sentient, whatever. Force is the universal language.
Do you think that Bitcoin changes that?
Absolutely not.
You don't think it changes the logic of violence, like maybe deters people from violence because the fact that this, new digital asset is basically unconfiscatable?
Someone needs to protect the miners. You need to protect your fucking keys. Like, so it makes it more directed. It allows you to have other options because like, when I say violence underlies everything or force is the universal language, doesn't mean that you always need to resort to your base. You know what I mean? Like, so when you have like, so let's even think about economics. Economics is a meta of force, right? Because when you increase your economic strength, you have more to be potentially violent with. You also have a greater need to be potentially violent so that you can protect your economic wealth. Private property, for example, exists insofar as it can be defended. Private property doesn't exist outside of the capacity to defend it. And the capacity to defend it is the ability to exert force, right? So force really underlies everything. We have abstractions for force.
It's funny because this is related to this, not necessarily like a tangent, but like related. But I was just thinking about governments and how my views have changed on governments. And I was thinking about here in El Salvador and how, Bukele has basically created a safety zone, right? A place where people can operate and do business and feel safe and secure with their family and their creations. And it made me start to think of government as a service provider.
100%.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. If Bukele wants to protect this region, but allow me to create and be an entrepreneur, like, yeah, I'll pay for his protection for sure.
Once again, Bukele's ability to the word inflict is the wrong one, but to like make controlled violence happen, right? Like, so Bukele's ability to enact controlled violence, that's what I'm looking for, creates the framework for cooperation, language, money, economics, to be the means via which we transact. But it is still underlied by the fact that he has a monopoly on violence here. And he provides the space.
Yeah, you need guards surrounding the territory, 100%. Right?
And this is what the warriors always represented. The warriors are like the white blood cells in a civilization. That's what they acted as, so that the peasants, the artisans, the merchants, and all this sort of stuff could operate. Because you remove the warriors, you have no boundary, you have no barrier. The cell of the body political, the cell of the body of society would be open to infection.
When we go back to real quick, let me just get this one point and we'll go to you started. But it's an interesting thread because when you talk about World War I and World War II, getting rid of the warrior class, and your thesis basically posits that warriors are they're not how how can I say it? They're not in that warrior spirit is not in everyone, right? It's either genetic or spiritual or whatever. Not everyone has it. So, and then you said World War I and World War II basically got rid of a lot of the warrior class, right? And it's interesting theory that I had as well. It's like, hey, how do we get rid of all these protectors of society? It's like, let's create a war and let's all have them go. Because if you think about who's on the front lines, it's the
bravest.
It's the bravest, yeah. And the most courageous and the people that embody all of the virtues of a warrior. And so boom, you wipe them all out. Now you got free reign to impose your communism on a once, prosperous nation.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, especially like World War I, you could make so many arguments that it was such a pointless war. It's so bloody. Okay, so this all ties together. I mean, there's a lot of threads we're all interweaving, right? Okay, so let me see if I can do this. Violence. There is a narrative out there that we live in a time where, especially in the West, we're safe. Things are secure. Is that perhaps is that an illusion due to fiat society? Because we've lost the warrior class, or at least it's, decayed seriously in the last 100 years. So the first thing, what do you think about that? Is that true, or is that just a falsity?
Yeah, I think we're more so under the illusion of safety. What we've basically done is we've distanced ourselves conveniently from the violence that still exists all over the world, like slaughterhouses and wars in Ukraine and Syria, this and that, and we're watching Netflix now, and we're going to Whole Foods. So it's like we distance ourselves from it. Doesn't mean there's less violence. It's just been moved elsewhere.
Right. So if we can see it on the camera, this is the interregnum for anyone that hasn't seen the book. And it's an awesome little diagram here. So as I see it, the fiat decline, right? Pre-2000, and then we ascent to the Bitcoin standard. So almost like on this side here, on the right, in this fiat stage, it's this illusion of safety and, security and all that. And it makes me wonder if once we get to the other side, I think you say it's a few decades away.
Yeah, maybe longer.
Maybe longer. Is it security at that point? Is it mutual respect because the warriors have woken up? What do they say? An armed society is a polite society.
Yeah.
And then in the middle there of the interregnum is, and this is kind of where it becomes loaded with all the threads going on, is that's like the chaos, tumultuous place, as you say in this intro, right? And so when we talk about violence, when we talk about anything that could happen in any realm, right? Where does jurisdiction play a role? So, for example, if we're choosing to be in El Salvador, right, because we want to pay the subscription fee to live here because we believe in the protection, right? Does that theoretically mitigate a certain kind of violence, but perhaps give more weight to another kind of violence?
Yeah, it's a trade-off. Yeah.
Right. And so once again, I look at it more like a karmic perspective. It's like, or maybe it's just all personal and this transcendence of jurisdiction. And this is really just like a crazy new evolution of humanity, maybe even Darwinistic in a sense, where only the strong will survive. And it's not just strong physically, materially, it's strong spiritually, mentally, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I mean, I think so to try and tie that into what you said, because I don't know what the question was at the end.
Yeah, I don't know either.
It's all good.
It's the point I want to explore.
It was a good weaving. So let me see if I can play with this. So the idea of the interregnum is this thing that, look, we have a current paradigm now, and the socioeconomic paradigm is shifting. So you've actually got the old cover here. If you look at the new cover, it says a code of virtue for a world on a new economic standard. And I was going to write socioeconomic, but I leave that for the book. So instead of just a code of virtue for a Bitcoin standard, because that's how I kind of envision Bitcoin. It's a new socioeconomic standard. That's like, it changes the monetary base, and it changes the resources, or it changes the way society deals with resources, right? So that's very, very, very significant. Now, if you change the playing field, you got to change the rules of the game. And I think the rules of the game in the current paradigm that we're living in are about, lying, cheating, stealing, fucking being a parasite, being a bureaucrat, the longhouse, HR, safety, fiat, all that sort of stuff, right? When we sort of move more towards the Bitcoin standard, we have a more raw, honest, organic, socioeconomic paradigm. And that will bring some things to the surface that we're going to need to find ways to deal with, right? It will probably, force the privatization of a lot of things. So, these sort of violence will move to different areas. Doesn't mean violence is going to disappear. It'll be, as I said, more controlled, more directed, more economically rational.